Hi everybody, this is the Cricket Badger podcast.
Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
And a very good evening to you all. Welcome along. It's the first one of our Ashes Cricket Badger podcasts. And I've basically been commentating on most of the first test match. This is why we're not doing a daily one throughout it. Otherwise, I would be dead, quite frankly. But apart from that, we're looking forward to the second test. We're looking back at the first test. We're actually going to try and pick a combined 11 because somebody said to me this morning how many of the English players would get into the Australian side. So we're going to be having a think about that as well. But let me bring on my fan badges today. We've got Phil, Mark and Ollie. And good evening to you, gentlemen. Let's have a look back to the first test match first. Obviously, England going down by 9 wickets at the Gabba in Brisbane. It wasn't the best of performances by England. The Gabba is notoriously a tough place to go and win. And so I don't think anybody's particularly surprised that England didn't win there. But let's start with you, Mark. I know that you're always glasses half empty when it comes to England. I think you've put a bet on 5-0 for Australia or 4-0 for Australia or something particularly depressing. Did you see anything from England in that first test match which made you think there's a bit of scope here for some improvement?
Yeah, I did actually. I think England are England. I thought they'd lose at the Gabba. I do think they'll lose the Test series, but I think they can take heart in the stand of Milan and Roots, obviously. I thought Ollie Pope in the first innings actually played quite well. Got out dreadfully in the second innings, but you know the lad's still got some potential. I think Ollie Robinson confirmed what we knew in the summer, that he was a very good test match bowler. Mark Wood bowled with a lot of gas, and I thought he was extremely unlucky. He hit the bat numerous occasions. Another time he could have had 4 or 5 wickets. So there was hope for England there, but there's always hope for England there, isn't it? Because they always do it as individuals, and they can always pull off a test match. But whether they can pull off a test series is a completely different matter.
It's the hope that kills you, isn't it? That's the phrase. And we had a little bit of hope at the end of day 3, Ollie, didn't we? Because England had that fantastic partnership between Milan and Roots. We rocked up on day 4 thinking, oh, fantastic. England could even get themselves ahead here and put pressure on Australia. That was not to be, was it? The hope disappeared very quickly.
I tell you what, with experience, why do you still put yourself through it? You know it was inevitable that, your heart says, we've got no chance here. Oh, sorry, we have got loads of chance, and your head is just saying, "What are you thinking? How will we get back in this?" But actually, that was one most disappointing thing, that England showed their ability to be so inconsistent day to day, have an excellent day, get themselves right back in the game, and then to absolutely throw it all away in a poor session the next day, almost immediately. And it's that what comes back to haunt them all the time. They lose big moments, and when they lose them badly, they lose them pretty badly. They come out of these moments just absolutely. It's like a football team come down at 5-0 at half time quite regularly. Often you can come back from those, and it just proved it again. Great day followed by an absolute abysmal one.
Yeah, I mean, I actually tweeted, I think, on the morning of day 4, how many times do England turn 220 for 2 into 300 all out? And I actually was over optimistic there because they finished 3 short of 300. Phil, I don't know how much of the first test match you managed to be able to watch, but
there wasn't much to watch, was it?
England can't bat, can they?
It's got to be one of the weakest batting lineups we've had in a long while. I suppose you've got the mitigation of Stokes being a shadow of himself at the moment coming back. But you look at the 2 up top. I mean, I'm not sure there are better options there to open, but I think that is fundamentally where our problem lies. Is we're just not getting the foundations. Root's having to come in early, and if he doesn't perform, that's it. That's it. And yeah, Pope flattered to deceive. He's not really kicked on in the way we hoped he would. And Josh Butler continues to be a bit of an enigma in the red ball game. So the thing is each of you look at them as individuals and you think, well, there's some good players in there, particularly Butler, particularly Butler and obviously Stokes as well. But it's hard to imagine. It's hard to see what you do with it. Who do you bring in? I mean, as an Essex man, I'd love to see Lawrence play, but is he going to really improve that batting lineup already? I suppose you'd come in for Pope, but of all the batsmen in that. Of all the batting efforts, his was one of the better ones in the first innings, as Mark rightly pointed out. So it just as you say, the hope kills you, but it just feels pretty hopeless in terms of batting. And I tell you what it does is it makes you feel sorry for people like Mark Wood, who churns his guts out, running in relentlessly, putting whatever damage he's doing to his joints and back, to then have to come back out again within 2.5 sessions to start all over again. It's just, I mean, I'm demoralised watching it. So being on the other end of it, I'd imagine there's more than a few words being exchanged.
Well, I'm really pleased we invited you on. You've made me feel really depressed now. I mean, let's go down the batsmen, and let's start with you, Mark, on Rory Burns, because I want to hear this. I actually looked back at Rory Burns, I think a couple of seasons ago, and he was getting across towards off stump, but he was getting across in a balanced sideways on fashion, and then therefore able to adapt to whatever ball came down. That right leg is going so far across, he's almost on the verge of turning his back to the bowler, isn't he? He's just, if it's a straight ball, or as Mitchell Stark produced off that first ball of the series, he's in trouble, isn't he?
Yeah, I think in an alternative career, he might get a job as a contortionist or something, or some kind of circus act. But I don't know what to say about Rory Burns anymore. I really don't. So we dissected his technique on so many occasions. He's made. He just, I don't think he's going to get any better than he is. He's going to get one more Test match maybe, but it's just, as Phil says, it's just an indication of where we are. The opening partnership for a long time now has been problematic. Burns plays the antithesis of what you'd expect a Test opener to play like. He's averaging 31. That's what he'll probably average if he plays another 20 Test matches. So they've got to make a decision on him sooner rather than later, because he's not going anywhere.
The counter argument, Mark, would be that an average of 31, if you could get two openers that average 31, at least it would get you through to a situation where Joe Root and co are coming in with some runs on the board. We saw in the second innings at the Gabba that Root came in at 65 for 2 rather than 11 for 2. And you saw the difference that made to Joe Root, because he wasn't under quite so much pressure and he was against the older ball and was able to then knock the ball around a little bit more comfortably. The other thing that makes me reluctant to write off Rory Burns is that I've done that once before. He played terribly against Ireland, and everybody was saying he's absolutely shocking. He's got so many moving parts. It's an absolute nightmare. And yet he turned himself around off the back of that and came back and scored, I think, 3 centuries that summer against Australia. So he has got a little bit about him. Sort of
his character, nothing wrong with his character and his kind of durability and his mental, but he just hasn't got the technique to last. I mean, if you're talking about 31 as an average for a Test match opener, and we're thinking that's rich pickings, then the bar set really very, very low, isn't it?
Well, it is though, isn't it?
Who comes in for him though, Mark?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've got no answers anymore, because we've been around it. Last summer we had the same debates, didn't we? It seems to be like some kind of weird Kafka model with England. Everything goes round and around, and they talk about planning, and then and the planning, then they don't play Jack Leach, and then he comes in for the first Test. Nothing seems to be. There doesn't seem to be any. I don't know. There just seems to be any strategy really. They talk about strategy, but they don't seem to have any. And I just don't know. they just don't want to play as a team, and they're not good enough. And you know, Burns will get another Test match. He might get some runs here and there, but you know, for him to play another 40 Test matches, no, I don't think so.
Hasib Hamid, though, Ollie, he didn't kick on. He got in the 20s, but he looked good. He looked like he knows where his off stump is. He knows what he's doing. He's got the technique that you think that if England persevere with him, then there might be a bright future for Hasib.
Yeah, he and you tweeted about this, but I still think it was a little bit unfortunate to get out, even though it's a strangle and the second innings. I thought that was a little bit unfortunate.
It's still an edge, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an edge. You know, sometimes they go for four, don't they? So I think he looks like he's definitely got the temperament. He's got a much more correct classical way of playing. He looks like he's got the ability of good defence, and he can put away the bad ball. I think the issue with Hamid is, and it was said last time I dissected a little bit, was against India, and that was mainly against some of the spinners who can bowl at him. He has a really, I know it doesn't matter as much in Test cricket, but he can get bogged down quite often. So he has a high dot ball percentage. So if the ball's not there to put away, he can't rotate. So he can be stuck at one end quite often, or get the other batsman stuck at the other end. So I think he needs to look at just a couple of ways of getting shots away to break it up a little bit. Alistair Cook didn't have the most amount of shots, but he was able to rotate when he had to. And he'll be the first to say that he wasn't, you know, the most flamboyant player. But we compare those. That's the sort of ability or run scoring and a run getting that we've got to look at. He might not get quite as close to him, but he's definitely got the temperament there. He just has a few areas to look at to ensure that he can help the team as much as possible and actually help himself get more runs in the process of doing it and take the pressure off.
You'd hope, wouldn't you? The more tests he plays and the more he gets used to that level and the more he starts to believe that he belongs at that level, because it's sort, everybody's got that imposter syndrome when they first go into that England side, I'm sure, regardless of whether you're Kevin Peterson or you're Hasib Hamid or who you are. You'd hope that would actually start to make him think, be a little bit more expansive. He doesn't have to be David Gower cover drives, but he can be a little bit more expansive and get away from strike, like you say. But that'll come with time, I think.
I hope so. You hope mixing around those players and the coaches. I mean, I'm not sure what coaching England are doing with the batsmen. They don't seem to be improving much at the moment. But
there's 22 backroom staff out there with England. Apparently.
I don't think it's not a matter of technique or talent with him. I think it's just about tweaking it and, like you say, making him feel more comfortable and getting used to that bowling and also what's expected of him, going to that next level as a player.
Phil, David Milan, I was impressed with him in the second innings. I think he looks a good player. I think he understands his game a lot more than he did 3 years ago. And I've been saying this week, I think he's a really good example of why it's not a bad thing necessarily to go back to a previous failure. Because if you go back to somebody that's failed before and they've gone away and they've thought about life and they've thought about their game and they thought about Test cricket, you'd think when they come back a second time around, they're a little bit more equipped to do that. And I also think with David Milan, because of his age, he actually thinks this is just a free hit now for him.
Yeah, once you. Oh, sorry, you're right, Ollie.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I
thought Ollie'd fallen off the world then.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad, Ollie. It's not that bad. Milan. Well, once someone's out, it shouldn't be the closing of a door. Particularly when you are, there's so many things that could be going wrong to cause a player to underperform. And the circumstances coming back, maturity, just a bit of psychological maturity. Anything could be the key to unlocking the potential that all these players clearly have. I mean, that really is probably the answer to the opening issue, is probably going back and looking at some of the others we've already discounted. I feel sorry for Burns and Hamid, because it feels like we're so underprepared for this, and obviously it's something I was moaning about in the text messages, that I appreciate not everyone sees the value of practice games, but I think there is value in just being out in the middle and feeling bat and ball, and just getting used to Australian conditions, and casting someone aside after one failure in a certain set of conditions, in a certain set of circumstances, It just doesn't make any sense. People should be tried in different scenarios. They should be reassessed. Otherwise, what's the point? You come in if you've only got one chance. I mean, Hamid is another example of that. He's obviously had his chance and come back, and he's not a rip-roaring success, but he's certainly not the worst option we've got out there at the moment, and showing some glimpse of potential as well. I mean, you can't judge people by their first efforts. It simply doesn't make sense to have these resources and simply cast them away at the first opportunity on any level.
I think with Rory Burns, it's not just that he didn't score runs; it was the manner of how he didn't score runs, the leg position, everything else. It was just so.
That was baffling. It was baffling.
I mean, whoever the batting coach is out there that's been working with Rory Burns, you'd think at some stage they say to him, Rory, your right leg's at cover point, mate. Where are you going?
But you're not getting to this point of your career and going to England for the coaching. You're not going off to play in an Ashes to be coached. Your technique should already be there. You've been picked because technically and mentally you are the best person to do that job. And if you're going to England still needing to sort your technique out, then it shows we've got bigger issues. Now things obviously creeping, things change. I was astonished by that foot movement. If it's been happening before, I've certainly missed it. If this is new and it's crept in, that's what a coach should be spotting. Have you noticed that's what you're doing with your foot?
From what I can see, Phil, it's not his feet. If I can kind of get my hands in the right place, his feet have been kind of going across to off stump. So he's been looking to try and counter the swing, but they've been going across in a level fashion. Whereas at the moment, one foot's going that way and the other foot's going well past it, isn't it? And it's
it's like he doesn't actually know where his off stump is. I mean, I don't know. It's
I mean, the reason he goes across to off stump is to know where his off stump is, but then he's got his legs in a taffle. It's just it doesn't make any sense.
Well, he's completely off balance. Once he's gone over there, he's then reaching back past himself to try and play anything that's not on that off stump. And indeed, it's an astonishing technical issue to have developed. If it has, perhaps he's always done it.
I mean, hello to Adam. He's saying good evening to us all. And we've got, unfortunately, when you come on Facebook and you put questions on the Facebook, it just says Facebook user. So if you want a name check, stick your name on your message. But Facebook user says, evening lads. Old Steve Smith has moving parts to his technique, smiley face. I mean, that's true, Mark, isn't it? But the moving parts that he completely understands. There's so many moving parts to Rory Burns that you feel that if only one thing goes out of sync, everything else goes out of sync. Whereas Steve Smith, he always seems to be balanced, even though it is a bit waggly and a bit strange.
You have to be. I mean, I was going to interject on Phil. I mean, you have to be an exceptional player to have an unusual technique. It's as simple as that. And Steve Smith has mastered a technique. He's also an exceptional player. Chandapur was another one who mastered an unusual technique. He was an exceptional player, an exceptional talent. I think when you're not at that level, to have a technique of Burns, it's always going to leave you exposed, like a lot of England's batsmen. It's the same with Hashim Hamid to a certain degree. He could be an exceptional player. I'm not saying he won't be, but one of his major problems is he plays with very low hands. Yeah. And so he's going out and nicking off. So, so unless you're an exceptional player, you can't get away with having quirky techniques, and especially at the highest level. And Rory Burns is way off being an exceptional player, and he has got moving parts that move every different test match. They're moving somewhere else, and that's the other problem. So,
is it harder for openers to have that quirky technique? I think openers have to be more technical, don't they?
Yes, of course they do. I mean, you look at some of the best openers that have played the game. They're always, Jeffrey Boycott, for example, is a perfect example. They have to play properly to be successful as an opener, because you're facing new fresh bowlers with new balls that are going to move about. So if you're an opener like Burns and you're constantly fiddling with your technique, which is unconventional anyway, bowlers are going to find you out at that level. It's as simple as that. And that's why he averages 31 in Test match cricket. And he's got, out of that, I think he's got 4 centuries. He's got a good run, which probably elevated him to 31. He's not going to get away with it ad infinitum. The best openers have classical techniques. Simple as that.
Mark,
The counter argument on Facebook here is that in the last 10 years, the best English openers are as follows. Alistair Cook averaged 41. And
good technique.
Yeah. Hasib Hamid averages 34 after 6 test matches. Embryonic.
Reasonable technique.
Rory Burns averages 31. He's third on list in the last 10 years.
Don't care. I think, I've just made the point. I mean, you could say, yeah, he's 31. You said he made 3 tons very quickly. I don't think he's got a huge amount of runs since then. I think if you're looking for somebody who's going to play another 40 test matches and be your number one opener and your senior, I mean, he's 31 years of age now. So you do say, is this guy, can he now play? Is he established? Can he play till he's 36, 37? And can we rely on him as our number one opener? Well, the answer to that is no. It's not. No. You can't.
I mean, the other thing I saw on Twitter the other day was that people were questioning Joe Root's captaincy. Rory Burns is the only one that can take over, but you can't give it to somebody that's on the precipice of being dropped, can you? Ollie, let's move on away from Rory Burns, because we could talk about Rory Burns for an hour and a half. Josh Butler, he's somebody that I have talked ad infinitum about whether he should be in that test team or not. But the Josh Butler that turned up at the Gabba if Josh Butler's going to play test cricket, that's the Josh Butler I want to see. I want to see a Josh Butler that goes out there with a little bit of aggression. If there's a bad ball, he's going to thump it. And he's going to not play white ball, Josh Butler, not be reckless, not be stupid. But if the ball's there to hit, he's going to thump it away. And he seemed to be on the front foot, metaphorically, in that innings. And I thought it looked better for it. I think sometimes Josh Butler gets caught between, I'm a white ball player, I can hit sixes, and, I'm in a test match, I better be defensive, and he's not quite sure what to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you want him to do well, but ultimately, quite often in test matches, you're disappointed by it. And you know that he's so talented, especially at white ball game, that you want him to transfer across into the test game. And it just shows how difficult it is. As good as you can be at white ball, to get runs in test cricket, it's the hardest form to do it. Now, it has been said, though, since he's been opening at T20 cricket, he's become more orthodox because he doesn't have to come up with so many funky things because the field is up. And effectively, it's just picking a gap or hitting the ball through the line or coming onto the front foot and playing through it. And that might have improved him or shown him to have a bit more solid, orthodox technique going forward. And I hope so, because he did play some really good shots. But yet again, gives it away. You've you've done all the hard work. You get into the 30s, and then you're sneaking off to a nothing ball, and it's a nothing shot.
I was on commentary, Ollie, and we were just having that discussion. I was saying to my co-commentator, Josh Butler, to me, he's playing the way he should do, but this is, he's got to kick on. He's got to make this a contribution. And then he was out, I think, the next over. And that's the frustration, isn't it? Because what I did like about him, though, he was hitting over the top of extra cover, and he was taking the ball on. He wasn't being the kind of shrinking violet that I think sometimes he is.
No, and obviously he's a good player of spin, and he's proved that as opening he can do it at T20. I know it's a totally different thing, but he can put the bad ball away. He looked confident, and he looked someone in form. Maybe because he was in form in the T20 World Cup, and he got some runs there, and he got a lot of runs. And he just seemed very much more comfortable and much more relaxed than a lot of the other players. The other players seemed uptight, but he looked someone who was comfortable within his game. He's probably in the prime age now for his batting. And he looked someone who was ready to show it. Still didn't go through with it, but he did look the most confident, apart from Joe Root, of all the innings. And I include Davin Milan's in that, because he was quite scratchy to start with, although he's done well to fight through it. Butler looked a lot more fluid for a long period and earlier on in his innings.
I'm going to ask for a vote now. There's 4 of us, so we might get a 2-all. Ollie Pope. Who thinks that Ollie Pope is the future of England's middle order in Test cricket? Right hand raised. Who thinks that Ollie Pope is going to be lucky to see it through this Ashes series? Right hand raised. Right, I voted for the first one. I forgot we were on the podcast there. I voted the first one. Nobody else put their hands up. So nobody's completely convinced. Ollie put his hand up there that he might be lucky to see it through the Ashes series. Would you be, if you were picking the team from scratch here, would Ollie Pope be in your first 11 for England? Hands up if you believe that. Just two of us there. James and Mark have got their hands up. Phil and Ollie.
Probably at the moment. Just
Oh,
about.
Ollie's wavering. Ollie's
Yeah.
going for that. Let's discuss Ollie Pope, because I think Ollie Pope has got everything. You know, if I was a young player at the minute and I was Ollie Pope, I would be so delighted, because I've got so much talent oozing from every single pore. And he seems to me to be almost two things wrong with Ollie Pope. He's a bit too frenetic at the start of his innings. It looks like his mind's racing and he's desperate to get going. And he hits some great shots and it then often comes good. But then he gets to 27 or he gets to 31 or he never really sees it through. And there's so much talent there, Mark, in Ollie Pope, that I just think I can understand why England are persevering with him. But how long do you stay a promising young talent before you actually have to realise that you're actually getting on a bit and you should actually be delivering?
Yeah, it's a good question with him, isn't it? Because he has got a lot of talent. That's why they're persevering with him. And also, he's probably they've tried so many other different options and they've not come off. So they've got to invest in somebody in the long term. They obviously seem different than Lawrence. I don't know. He is frenetic. He's frenetic. He doesn't seem to have kicked on since he got the ton in South Africa. He does get to 27 and play stupid shots. Whether it's a matter of concentration, whether it's just the fact that he hasn't worked out a game plan at Test cricket, I don't know. Similar players have had similar problems in the past. Carl Hooper was one for the West Indies, who for a long time was seen as a sublime talent, but quite often got out in the 30s, and it wasn't until he was in his 30s, mid 30s that he started scoring a lot of runs for the West Indies. But
I mean, that's the thing with Ollie Pope. I mean, Mike Gatting was similar for England, wasn't he? I can't remember how many ridiculous number of Test matches it took Mike Gatting to score a century, but once he did, he was off and running. And I mean, Ollie Pope's got a century already to his name, but I just think with Ollie Pope, there's going to be a day where suddenly everything clicks, and he thinks, I'm a Test player now, and he's off.
Yeah, I think so, and I think he's got the talent. I mean, I've seen him get I've seen him get 2 tons for Surrey. Actually, he looks a great player, but that's obviously a different level of cricket. Maybe he might be suited more to batting at 5 rather than Stokes at 5. I don't know. A bit more responsibility on him. Feeling that he's not batting with the middle order, the tail. I don't know, but I would persevere with him because A, I think he's got talent, and B, as we've said on numerous occasions, there isn't really much else in the pipeline, really.
Well, on that point, Phil, you're an Essex fan. Dan Lawrence is out there in the squad. I like Dan Lawrence a lot. He's not maybe covered himself in complete glory yet in an England shirt, but he's had his moments.
Yeah.
And on the previous winter, the last Lions trip, he was in Australia and he topped the averages, well into 3 figures. Played really well on that trip. So he obviously likes Australian pitches. And the Lions don't play mugs. They play good bowlers on those trips. Do you think Lawrence is better than Pope, or do you think there's room for both of them? How do you see that?
Better. Technically, I think Pope's a better player. I think Lawrence has. I think Lawrence has a bit more aggression. I think he's a bit more competitive. I mean, I think Pope stays in the team because no one has come along and taken the place from him, and he's benefiting from a lack of competition. I think Lawrence can probably consider himself a bit hard done by in that regard, but equally, this is Test cricket. You've got to come and take your opportunities, and you've got to earn your place.
If the tour carries on like it is, then Lawrence is going to get a Test match on this trip, isn't he?
Yeah, and as you say, there's arguments for putting him in. I mean, particularly in a team that looks so undercooked, for someone who's at least demonstrated a preference for the conditions. And I think the Aussies, you've got to fight fire with fire. You've got to give some of it back. That's why it was so timid, so supine. Some of the batting in the first Test is what really gets my goat, to be honest. Is that the one thing you can't do is roll over and take it. You've got to at least give some of it back along the way, so they know for the next Test. And I think you get more of that with Lawrence. But it's it's how would you get him in the team if you're not going to drop Pope? How do you get him in?
One of the things, Ollie, I mean, if we could take Ollie Pope, Dan Lawrence, and Hasib Hamid to the hospital, get a surgeon to basically sew them together and take Hasib Hamid's concentration and belligerence and technique, Ollie Pope's beauty, because when he plays well, he's terrific to watch, and a little bit of Dan Lawrence's spark and fight and drive. That'd be a hell of a play, wouldn't it, if we could combine those three?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I'd like to see how that would work out. If you can just get a diagram of it, which half and how you want it to work.
You're going to keep Hasib Hamid's hair. That's got to stay on the body.
That's the best part. Is but I actually, going back to, I think Ollie Pope sometimes escapes more media criticism because he is really easy on the eye when he bats well, and he's more classical. If it was Zach Crawley getting out, and I know he has done, for example, who's got a bit more of a different technique, or Rory Burns, they get a lot more heat than Ollie Pope. He gets away with it. He's a lot more classical, great to watch, easy on the eye, and in fact, he's almost like got that Mark Rampercash in the 20s, gets out quite a lot, looks good, and then doesn't go any further. But I think England, I think Dan Lawrence is hard done by. I'm not the biggest fan of Dan Lawrence, but if you look at the runs, he's got a stat load of runs in the last three years, probably one of the highest in the Championship. So they've got on that, and I think he showed a lot of promise in Sri Lanka. He got some good innings. I think he's a bit unlucky, and again, if he was selected, he's going to come in less cooked than a lot of the players in the Lions are, who are facing good bowlers. So you'd think almost with him being in the squad, it's going to put Lawrence possibly further down the pecking order than someone like a Bracey or Bohannon who got run.
It's a really good point, that, Ollie, because Don Best got sent to the Lions and he played for the Lions. It wouldn't have been the daftest decision in the world to get Dan Lawrence some runs for the Lions as well, would it?
No.
Yeah.
But do you know what's frustrating is we know what Don Best can do, and obviously he's gone there to practice. You've got two leg spinners who can get bowl a ball, and Matt Parkinson had the same last winter when he was carrying drinks. He must be brilliant at mixing them.
Thank you to our sponsors today. You can grab your holiday season deal by going to nordvpn.com/badger, and you can use the code badger to get up to 73% off your NordVPN plan and a bonus gift. So use that, keep your internet safe, and use that code badger, nordvpn.com/badger, and use the code badger, and you can get 73% off. Facebook user says vote yes on Ollie Pope. He's an Ollie Pope fan. Let's move on to combining the two sides then. Australia, I don't think this is a vintage Australian side by any means. They've got some very good players in there, but they are beatable. I think they've got weaknesses in that team as well. And who would get... It's probably... There's going to be more Australians in the combined team, especially in Australian conditions. Which of the English players would get across into that Australian side, and who would they take out? I mean, it's difficult to get rid of Travis Head, isn't it, off the back of what he did? But you'd imagine that Joe Root would come in and replace Travis Head and line up alongside Smith and Labuschagne in the middle order, Phil, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I suppose you've got to set your parameters. You're going on form, fitness. I mean, it's a prime Root has to get in there somewhere, as would a prime Stokes. But Stokes in his current state would struggle to get on the pitch as 12th man.
I'll tell you what, I wish my worst state was what Ben Stokes is capable of.
No, he obviously deserves the regard in which he's held, because he's just performed beyond what is reasonable. But it's such an ask to ask a man who's had that time off to come straight back in to an Ashes test in Australia and expect him to be able to bat and bowl and field and turn matches in a team that's struggling so desperately already. But it's ordinarily you'd think Stokes would be certainly coming for someone like Cameron Green, but given his physical difficulties and coming back into it, I think he would struggle at the moment.
I mean, would we agree then? We haven't gone to the openers yet, but would we agree Labuschagne at 3, Smith at 4, Root at 5, and probably Ben Stokes coming in at 6 instead of Cam Green? I think Cam Green is going to be a very, very fine player. I don't think he's quite there yet. Would you be happy with that, chaps?
Yeah. I would be.
So on that basis, then that's 3, 4, 5, and 6 sorted out. Openers. We've got David Warner. We've got who's his partner? I forgot his name.
Marcus
Harris. Marcus Harris. We got Hasib Hamid and we got Rory Burns. On the basis of what we discussed already, I think we can discount Rory Burns because I don't think he's going to get that many. He's not going to get that many votes. Does Hasib Hamid replace Marcus Harris and line up alongside David Warner?
Yeah, absolutely.
Phil shaking his head.
Marcus Harris is rated as the worst Test opener in history. Average wise after 20 Test matches or 20 innings.
And he could wander into our team at the moment.
Yeah, but he wouldn't though, would he? He's not better than Hasib Hamid, is he?
Well, I mean, we keep talking up Hasib, but I mean, he's averaging what 26 over his Test career now, isn't he?
34.
Well, 26 since his comeback, or 25, I don't know.
He's averaging 34, which is more than Marcus Harris averages.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think you'd have to look at promoting one of the reserve middle order batsmen to be one of the openers, I think.
Chris Wokes.
Maybe put Stokes in as an opener and have Green in at number 6 because you know.
I'm gonna take Badger's voting rights here, and Hasib Hamid comes in instead of Marcus Harris. You're not getting Marcus Harris.
Yeah, it's his fan club. Is it the Hasib fan club? Is James? So.
Yeah. So David Warner, Hamid, Labuschagne Smith, Root, Stokes. It's actually 3 and 3 so far in this batting lineup. The wicketkeeper at number 7, Josh Butler or Alex Carey. Who wants to make a case for
Butler?
either?
It'd have to be Butler on. You know, Carey's not proving anything at Test level. So it'd have to be Butler. The fact that he averages 33 or 34.
Well, Marcus Harris hasn't proven anything at Test level, and you're voting for him.
Butler, if you think about it, as a number 7 batsman, as a wicket-keeper batsman, he averages 33. We had this debate last summer. Perfectly reasonable as a wicket-keeper batsman. Maybe our expectations of Josh are a bit elevated.
You don't need another batsman there. You can bring in folks and have a proper keeper.
No need for that.
You've got 6 top, well, unless Harris or Hamid, right, 5 top batsmen before them. If you still need your wicket keeper to bat, then we need to give this game up.
If you're watching Marcus or Hasib, I'm very sorry for some of the comments that have just been given out for both of you two. So we're going to put Josh Butler in at number 7. So the gentleman that said to me on Twitter earlier, how many of the England players would get into this combined 11? So far, it's 4 English and 3 Australian. The bowling might be slightly different, but it might not be. Who is cast iron in terms of this bowling attack? Anybody object to me sticking Pat Cummins in at number 8?
Australian.
He's not just beautiful to look at because he's a very, very handsome man. He's a very, very fine player as well. Number 9 in this side is going to be the spinner.
well, that's a really tough one, that, isn't it? So that's.
I reckon it might be Mr. Lyon, mightn't it? 402 wickets, I think he's got now. So we'll take that as read. Hazelwood's. I know he's injured, but I think we're going to keep him as pretend he's fit for this. Hazelwood's got.
If we pretended Stokes is fit, then we've got to pretend.
We've got to put Hazelwood in at 10, haven't we?
Yeah.
Does an English bowler get in at number 11 and oust Mitchell Stark?
In Australian conditions?
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy hasn't got the greatest record in Australia, has he?
Mark Wood?
No.
I think. Look, I think he'd have a shout of getting in there 11, but I think the fact that Stark's a lefty has that bit of variation. You'd have to. I'd keep him. I mean,
just a point to make here. The Australians aren't even sure they're going to keep him in the side, let alone being in the combined 11.
He'd get in our side every game, most games.
I agree.
I don't understand why there's so much criticism in Australia of Stark because I think he's a fine bowler. I know
he's a good lad as well. I was at Yorkshire when he played that season, and he's a really nice fella. So we're going to on the basis purely of niceness.
Hey?
Sorry. He's averaging 32 with the bat in the last 3 years, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, he should be batting a bit higher than that.
But. Yes, we're gonna. We'll put him ahead of Lyon. Then he goes in at number 9. Lyon at 10 and Hazelwood at 11. So it's basically apart from Stokes, it's an all Australian bowling attack. But it's our combined side is David Warner, Hasib Hamid, Marnus Labuschagne, Steve Smith, Joe Root, Ben Stokes, Josh Butler, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Stark, Nathan Lyon, and Josh Hazelwood. I reckon that's about right.
James, would you argue now that Root is now our mainline spinner ahead of Leach after the last game?
I mean, we could talk about this again for another hour, but Matt Parkinson, why did he not get a game for the Lions? Why was he not in that?
It's criminal.
I mean, he would have made sense. And the thing is, Australia taken the decision quite rightly. It was a really good tactic to basically gun him down and fire him out the attack. They did it brilliantly against Jack Leach, and Jack Leach didn't have a plan B, did he? The thing with Parkinson is he plays white ball cricket. He's used to people having a go at him. He can change his attack. He can. I think he'd be better in that situation, Mark, than Leach or Bess in that regard.
Yeah, well, you don't have to say anything about Matt Parkinson for me, because I think he's a fine bowler, and I think England are at the moment just wasting his talents. I mean, as soon as he can drop him from the white ball team, they drop him. Having said that, I feel very, very sorry for Leach. England keeps saying they have these plans and it's all been geared for the Ashes, but Leach didn't play a bloody Test match in the summer, and then he suddenly banged into the first Test match at Brisbane on a green top in the first innings.
With some of the best batsmen in the world intent on hitting him out of the attack,
and the left-handers as well. I mean, I don't know. It just shows you what muddled thinking the so-called plan of Silverwood and Root has been. It's just been chaotic. So I do feel for Jack Leach. And remember, he did get knocked about in India. I think it was in Chennai, wasn't it, in the first?
Yeah, Rishabh Pant took him down, didn't he?
And he came back well in that series. So he's got some character about him. So people keep saying it's another Kerrigan moment and he's should get dropped and that's it. I feel sorry for the guy, but
he's undoubtedly got something between the ears. The thing, Ollie, that would suggest that Matt Parkinson is not going to get a go is that, I mean, I listened to Jonathan Agnew's 6-part preparation for the Ashes. He interviewed pretty much every single one of the 22 behind-the-scenes staff that are out there in Australia, from the nutritionist all the way through to the coaching staff, and they all made a big point, or some of them made a big point of their stats and the history of the stats and the Ashes series would lead them not to give a debut to a player in an Ashes series. So they've obviously made that decision that because I mean the squad they've taken, they've all played Test cricket. There's not a potential new cap in the main squad. That would suggest to me that Matt Parkinson's not got a chance in hell of making his debut.
There's plenty of players that made Test debuts in 2010-11, and also Ben Stokes did in 2013-14 that would counter that. And there's other players who've done well after making their debut in Ashes series. So I think Kevin Peterson, another exception of it. I know it's down under. It just seems to be that his face doesn't fit at the moment, and they've got their plan, as they like to call it. But and they'll go with Leach, and that doesn't work. They'll go with Bess, and if that doesn't work, they'll have to go back to Crane or Parkinson, who haven't been playing for a long time. It's a concern because they don't seem to want to pick a wrist spinner, which actually in Australian conditions would probably work a bit better.
Phil, when does Simon Harmer qualify? Does that not happen anymore because of Brexit?
I don't think it happens anymore, does it?
I think Brexit means Harmer can never play for England, doesn't it? Because it kind of changes the rules in him being English, effectively.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like there was any plan to get him in, was there? I mean, they've had to set those wheels in motion. It's not like it's new, the Harmer phenomenon at Chelmsford, is it? He's been outperforming every other spinner in the country for God knows how long.
I mean, I must admit, I'd prefer to see Simon Harmer than Jack Leach. With all due respect to Jack Leach, I totally agree with what Mark said. He's got something between the ears, Jack Leach. He's got fight and he's got determination.
Yeah, you couldn't film it. If you were going to pick the worst situation to drop somebody into, as Mark described, you would pick 5-6 months of not playing, dropping him onto a pitch against a baying Australian set of left-handers on a
Yeah.
green top. I mean, he's got every reason to be thoroughly
There was
aggrieved.
a moment in the Formula One Grand Prix. I don't watch Formula One very often, but obviously it was a major moment. And Lewis Hamilton was talking to his pit lane, and they were explaining to him at the restart, and he said, "So he's going to be right behind me, is he, on new tyres?" And you could hear in Lewis Hamilton's voice, he was thinking, "Well, that's my world title gone." And that's basically the same thing with Jack Leach, isn't it? I'm going to be at the Gabba against left-handers.
Yeah, they've absolutely stuffed him, and you've got to manage your spinners. If you're a captain, you've got to captain them properly. It's a completely different proposition bowling any form of spin with a bit of pressure. Being under pressure, it's an awful job. It's an awful job. The seamers haven't worked. Here's the ball. Now you get on with it. I mean, it's just. I'd be absolutely livid if it was my opportunity to fight my way back in, and you handed that type of circumstances, and essentially told, "Go and Superman out. You're going to have to Superman this situation, bowl out of your skin in the first innings as well. He's not even on a 4-day pitch. You can't. No one can judge that. No one can judge him by that." Because it was an absolutely awful scenario to be
Phil,
dropped
do you
into.
think they should stop having left-handers there? Just let him bowl to right-handers, because he's got to be able to have a plan B. He's got to be able to adapt his game. And even he's at 29, 30 now. When does that come? I know he hasn't played for a bit, but you think having that much experience in a first-class game or playing the games he does at Somerset should give him that sort of ability to do that.
Plan B,
if he doesn't.
Yeah, but you're asking him to. I mean, there might be a plan B, but if you're bowling with no pressure, if you are just on the end of someone charging you, and there is nothing, you've got nothing there in terms of runs to protect you, no pressure at all coming from the other end, then you're just asking him to win it on his skill alone, and it's just so hard to do when you've got no pressure there on the scoreboard. If you know that you are going to be 200 runs behind every innings.
You've just said, Phil, that an international cricketer who plays Test matches should rely on his skill alone. That's not too much to ask, is it?
Well, yes. Look, there are players that can do it, but if you're constantly under the pressure of being 150 or under the pressure of being behind on the first innings, and then your option is, well, here's the ball, Jack, crack on, son. You've not got the benefit of us being able to protect you in terms of being able to have a few runs scored off you, because we can bring the field in. We can set attacking fields for you. You're just simply asking him to work to work on the off the pitch, and he should be able to produce, and he has produced on occasion, as Mark pointed out. He has made his comeback in India, but to expect someone to produce Warne-like performances off and save games single-handed, he's not that bowler. He is not. He's not an exceptional spin bowler, and to expect him to bowl as one is just unreasonable to my mind. You've got to give him a chance.
Let's move on. Joe Root as captain. I want to make this very quick. I would have batted first if I'd been Joe Root. I said so before the toss, and it's the Gabba. He should have batted first. He was let down by his batsmen, including himself, because the batsmen just didn't turn up for him, did they? I thought there was a lot of people on Twitter who were saying, we're keeping the powder dry, maybe, or saying, it might be a good toss to lose or something, who then lumped into him after England lost a load of wickets. All of a sudden, he should have bowled first. Quite hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, in cricket on the toss and stuff. I thought it was the right decision to bat first. You just needed England's batsmen to turn up, and surprise, they didn't do, and they let him down, and he was part of that as well. If England had made 250, 260, that Test match would have been a totally different beast going through the rest of it. But let's move ahead to Adelaide, because that's now the last 11 Test matches England have played in Australia. They've lost 10 and drawn 1. The last 3 pink ball Test matches England have played overseas, they've lost. Australia have never lost a pink ball Test match. And yet the narrative in the English kind of psyche in the press seems to have suggested for some time now, this is England's chance. the pink ball test match is the leveler. This is where England can actually stand up and get something from this series. Mark, on the basis of the stats I've just given you, that's a little bit fanciful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit fanciful, but with this England side, they can pull results out the hat, and they will have Anderson back. They will have Broad back. They will probably go to an all-seam attack. The ball will hopefully swing in the pink ball test, particularly maybe when it gets to the twilight sessions. So, just because they've never done it doesn't mean they can't do it. And the nature of this unpredictable England side is that, if Anderson has a good day and somebody backs him up with the ball and somebody, Root gets some runs, and they could feasibly win it. I don't expect that to happen, but I can see what they're thinking. I can see what the strategy is, so-called. But do I think that will happen? No, I don't think Australia will win the test match, but England have surprised us before. They have individuals that can win games. What I said at the beginning of the show is they don't have teams that can win big series, but they have individuals that can win a game. So it can happen, but I think Australia will win.
The last pink ball test match Australia played was against India, and they bowled India out for 36, I think. That was India bounced back off that and ended up winning that series. But I tweeted earlier, Ollie, the pink ball test matches to me, I don't think we've quite got it right yet, but sometimes the pink ball swings in those that twilight hour, and it hoops around corners and the bowlers have a field day. Sometimes it does nothing at all. It can be quite dead as a dodo during the daytime part of it. Can be batting, very much batting friendly. And on that basis, to me, it's very much a lottery because it's who is batting when it's dead as a dodo, who has the ball in hand when it suddenly starts to hoop around corners. If that's Pat Cummins or Michael Nessa comes in or whoever comes in and is hooping it around at England's top order, they struggle when the ball's not moving. If the ball's hooping around corners and it's pink, what chance have England got, Ollie?
Well, we're really good at finding the edge when it's not moving. I'm just hoping it moves too much and we don't get that close to it. And I think when it comes to that, I think what it can do is it can exacerbate the difference between the sides, but also, like I say, it can level it. The only good thing to say is that last time is, and a lot of people would say James Anderson got it under lights. He got 4 wickets outside of the lights playing a part. So he did get the ball to do stuff and got 4 out of his 5 wickets during the daylight hours before the lights played a part. And I'm hoping that he's able to do something. There's a lot of pressure on someone, again, who hasn't bowled very much, didn't play in the last test, hasn't got any miles in the legs. He's got experience, but him and Stuart Broad, especially James Anderson, in the most recent years, has shown that he needs a couple of games sometimes to get into a series. So I'm a bit worried about that. I hope that we can pull something out. I hope, and also, but you don't think so?
It's that word hope again, Ollie. It's that word hope again.
No,
it's the hope that kills you.
Right bit. That's killed you. But again, I know something, but we might win the toss again, and then we might bat for a day and a bit. Then it goes flat, and Australia come in, and the ball doesn't do anything. That's, like I said, it is a lottery, and that's what makes it quite exciting because there's even more nuance involved in it because of the lights and the change of that, and no one's sure what that pink ball behaves like. I'm looking forward to it, and it's a much better time to watch.
Yeah, 4 a.m. UK start, isn't it, Phil? And will you be setting the alarm clock to get up and watch England trounce Australia in Adelaide?
Yeah, for my sins. I think it's a leveler, isn't it? It takes the edge off, or potentially a leveler. It could, I suppose, depending on the toss, exacerbate the differences between the teams. But it's you'd like to think that if we can get the benefit of a swinging ball when we bowl, that would play into our hands, albeit that we, as you say, we can't seem to play a straight ball, let alone a swinging ball. So I'm not filled with much optimism. I'll certainly be tuning in to watch it, and it is a far more reasonable time, far more acceptable time for cricket viewing. And the best thing about that, getting up early, is that you can actually have some peace and quiet while you watch it. instead of the kids demanding your phones like I had today, which is why I nearly missed the message for this. So yeah, it's I'm tuning in. I'm optimistic insofar as I think you take the heat out of it. I mean, Ollie Pope struggled. He looked like he sort of ran out of steam a bit in the afternoon. So you'd like to think if it's a bit cooler that he might benefit from bowling in the cooler conditions. That the swinging ball hopefully suits our bowlers a bit more than we've got the bowlers to exploit that a bit more. So I'd like to think we've got more prospect in this one. And what chance do we have? I think we've got a tosser's chance, haven't we? If we win the toss, then we're in the game. And if we lose the toss, then you're looking at a 2-dayer.
The one thing in Joe Root's favour is he is a very good tosser. I've heard he's got a good record. Let's finish off then, fellas. We didn't do a preview podcast. We've not heard any of your predictions. This is where Mark gets turned off. But 1-0 down, England going into the second test match, 4 to play. Phil, let's start with you. Your series prediction: A, who wins the second test match, and B, what's the result going to be after 5?
I think the Aussies win the second test match. I think they win one of the next 2. They're 3-0 up by the time we go into the last one. They're given up, and we might sneak the the last one, which will then cover over a few cracks.
And everybody's suggesting that Hobart might be a bit more English friendly. It might be kind of more English conditions in Hobart. Mark, what about you in terms of your prediction for the second test match and your series prediction?
I think for the second test match, I think Australia will win. I think there's two test matches in succession, quite quick. It could really unravel quite quickly if England do get badly beaten in this test match for the Boxing Day one. I can see Australia winning. I think Australia win 5-0, but I can see it being 4-1. But my money would be on 5-0.
You're an absolute disgrace, Mark Hilton. I'm going to go next, Ollie. So I'm going to level it up a little bit and give you the chance to have the deciding vote here. Because I think England will win the second test match in Adelaide. I think the test at the MCG will be a draw. It'll be a high-scoring draw. Then we will go into the game in Sydney where Australia will win and England will win in Hobart. And that's where my 2-2 comes in, Mark, that you were questioning the other day. So 2-2 in this series, but England won't bring the urn home. Ollie?
Well, I think a lot depends actually on David Warner's fitness. So if he's a doubt at the moment with the bruising, if he doesn't play, that really does expose their top order. I think if Marcus Harris and Khawaja, compared to Marcus Harris and David Warner, is a lot different prospect really, and it takes pressure off. So I think that will be key. The loss of Hazelwood, although they bring Nisa in, Hazelwood's an absolute class bowler, and his record with the pink ball is good. So I think England will benefit possibly from the one at the moment, possibly 2 absentees for the Australian team. England can't really start as badly again, even though saying that they quite often do go to new depths. But I'm really optimistic that they will play better. And again, they've got a game under their belt, so that's like they've effectively had a 4 or 5 day warm up game.
Ollie,
because they were so undercooked.
England are most dangerous when they've just lost. But they always are. They wait until the newspapers turn on them. They wait until everybody writes them off, and that's when they fight back. They've always done it.
I think England. So I think they've got, depending on the Warner situation, England could win this. I think it's one of their better chances. And I'm glad they're not playing at Perth, because if they're at Perth, they've got no chance. Just write that one off straight away.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
I think we just want to see some fight, don't we? I just want to see some aggression. I just want to see someone give it back to them.
We haven't got your prediction, Ollie. Who's going to win the series?
Oh, it'll be Australia will win the series. I'm not only crazy enough to go 2-2, and then actually.
I hadn't noticed James drinking, but he must be.
I want to. Well, there's not alcohol.
I would like to know the odds on that.
The odds backs England to beat India as well.
I'd say 4-1.
4-1. I think that's better.
Or we sneak at Hobart. It very 90s style. When a dead rubber at the end, take the gloss off an Australian series win.
So just I thought I was by far the most pessimistic person on there, and apart from James, who's clearly off with the fairies, I am the most optimistic one among us.
Yeah, you started off by lowering the bar though, Phil.
So I
brought
lulled you in.
You brought everybody down with you. Phil, Mark, and Ollie, as always, an absolute pleasure to have you on
Thanks,
the
Dave.
Cricket Badger podcast. We are going to come back after the second Test match ahead of Test match number 3, and hopefully at some stage between all of them as we go through. Don't forget that you can get your deal with the NordVPN. I'm just going to try and find my little bit of a thing here. Grab your holiday season deal by going to nordvpn.com/badger or use code badger to get up to 73% off your NordVPN plan and a bonus gift. So nordvpn.com/badger, and you'll see all of the details there in terms of keeping your internet safe and what have you. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Enjoy the second Test match. Thanks for listening and watching, everybody, and we'll see you again very soon indeed.